So I pose the question whether legislative findings and declarations are necessary in legislation. As we make our way through California bills each year, we occasionally come across a section one in the bill, usually with legislative findings and declarations. Now, why are these used and are they actually necessary? It might not surprise you, but there are basically two schools of thought among the bill drafting community. But let's first examine what they are. So, bills sometimes contain the equivalent of a preamble or a declaration of purpose. And the idea here is to have some expressions of legislative intent. In California, they are sometimes intent or purpose statements, but generally they are in the form of what we call legislative findings and declarations. And the general purpose of this language, as you would imagine, is to explain the purpose or the intent of the legislature in enacting this particular statutory scheme. Now, are these legislative findings and declarations necessary? Not surprisingly, the answer is probably that depends. There are definitely those who believe that these statements of purpose can assist the courts in interpreting any ambiguous terms and have a better chance of giving effect to the legislature's intent. Our state statutes sometimes have ambiguities, and so courts have to look to the legislative history or other sources to determine what those statutory words were intended to mean or what the legislature possibly intended. Now, while a statute's plain reading is generally supposed to be followed, at times this may not be so easy. And so courts have to then rely upon some of the limited evidence in California legislative history about intent. And one of those pieces of evidence could obviously come from the bill itself through the legislative findings and declarations section. Now, following this point of view, the use of legislative findings may provide a reviewing court with kind of a roadmap, if you will, that'll assist the court in its analysis of the statutory language. This viewpoint also advocates for the judicial branch to provide some level of deference to the legislative body's determination regarding its stated need for the bill. And as a matter of following the separation of powers doctrine in the state, a bill's explicit rationale will probably assist a court in not having to go on a fishing expedition to try and find, amongst other forms of extrinsic aids, some guidance as to what the legislature intends. So sometimes we find this language that will begin with the legislature finds and declares the following. And these could be a couple of sentences to a number of lengthy paragraphs or more. Now, on the other side of the legislative lawyer debate are those who believe that a well-drafted bill shouldn't require any extraneous statements within the bill itself, of course, that seeks to accomplish what is hopefully being done by the bill language itself. I cite as an example the South Dakota Legislative Council, and in their drafting manual, they say, a declaration of purpose is strongly discouraged and is rarely useful. A well-drafted bill should not need a declaration of purpose. However, if a statement of policy or purpose is to be included, it is ordinarily the first section of the bill, like it is in California, and should be short and concise. An improperly worded statement of purpose may cause serious problems of judicial interpretation. Now, based on this view, language stating the purpose of a bill or recital of facts or findings and declarations should not be included as a matter of course. However, in some circumstances, purpose or intent language may be useful, again, in protecting a bill against a legal attack after its enactment, or to give meaning to a provision for interpretation. So in those circumstances, appropriate language may in fact be included in a bill. But as I've indicated, there's clearly two schools of thought on this issue.